So one-way slab, a slab which resists the entire or major part of the applied load by bending in only one direction. So here in this figure we can see we have a slab panel which is supported by the walls on the two ends. So if a uniformly distributed load is acting on that slab panel, so it will bend only in one direction. There will be no bending in the second direction. So if a slab panel bend in only one direction, so then it will be termed as one-way slab. So how we will come to know that whether this slab panel will bend in one direction or two directions? So for that we have different criteria. So for example, if slab is supported on all four sides and its aspect ratio is less than 0.5, then it will behave as one-way slab, mean it will bend only in one direction. So we can see over here, so it is supported on all four sides and its aspect ratio, mean its shorter side to longer side ratio is less than 0.5. so in that case it will bend only in one direction. There will be no bending in the other direction. Or we can define this R as the aspect ratio shorter side over longer side. So in that case it should be less than 0.5. But if we consider longer side over shorter side, so in that case it should be more than 2. So if the ratio of longer side to shorter side is more than 2, mean the length of the slab is more than the width of the slab. So in that case it will be behaving like a one-way slab, mean it will bend only in the one direction. It will bend along the shorter direction, and this shorter direction will be considered as the span of the slab. Slab having supports on less than 4 sides can be designed as one-way slab. So for example, if we have a slab and it is bounded or supported on 3 sides, so then we can design this slab as a one-way slab. But if the slab is supported on the two opposite edges, so it will always be considered as one-way slab. For example, in this figure, so it is supported on these two sides, these two opposite sides. So in that case it will be considered as one-way slab and it will be bending in this one direction. And this span, the spacing between these supports, will be considered as the span of the slab. Similarly, if it is supported on the longer side, so then this side will be considered as the span of the slab. So cantilever slab is also always considered as a one-way slab. So it will always bend in one direction. So cantilever beam or cantilever slab will only bend in one direction. There will be no bending in the second direction. So let's see some examples of one-way slab in the real structures. So shades in the roofing system, so they are always one way. So if we have a slab supported by the walls, for example like this, and we have this portion, a shade extended beyond this support or beyond this wall, so this shade will be considered as a, this much portion will be considered as one-way slab, this shade portion. Similarly, slab of stairs, so slab of stair is normally supported on the ends, mean at the start and at the end of the slab. So if we see in the section, so we will have the situation like this. So here we have actually steps. So this is the slab of the stair and it is supported at this end, mean by this vertical wall and by this horizontal slab, and sometimes we also have some beam over here. So it's always supported by the, always supported at the ends. So that's why it will be a slab which is supported at the ends and it will be considered as one-way slab and it will be bending in this direction. So this much will be its span. So this much will be its span, this much. Okay, strip footing. So in case of strip footing, we have the case of one-way slab. For example, if we have this strip footing, mean footing which is supporting the wall, so this side as well as this side, these both sides will be considered as one-way slab separately and will be designed as a one-way slab. Similarly, cantilever retaining walls, so this is a case similar to that of the footing. So here in case of cantilever, we have actually one side longer and the other side smaller, and similarly this vertical wall or stem is also considered as a slab. So we can consider this stem as a one-way slab. Similarly, the foundation we can also consider that as a one-way slab, the both sides, this side as well as this side. Okay, beams are wall supported slab with R less than 0.5, aspect ratio less than 0.5. So in case of beam supported slab, so if the aspect ratio is 0.5, so we will have a one-way slab. Similarly, slab band system. So actually band is a modified shape of beam. So in case of beam we have a larger depth but smaller width, but in case of bands we have larger width but smaller depth. So in case of band slab system we have bands running along the line of the columns, but in case of beam column system we have beams running along the columns. So if we have these bands running along the line of columns, along the central line of the columns, and these bands are only in one direction, so then this beam or this slab in between these two bands will be considered as one-way slab. So this slab, if we see in this figure, so this much slab will be considered as one-way slab. So it will be bending in this direction. Similarly, ribbed supported slab or joist slab. So sometime in case of beam column slab we have primary beams along the central line of the columns, but in case of secondary beams we provide a joist, a thin beams having larger depth but smaller width, and these are closely spaced. So in that case the slab panel in between these joists will be considered as one-way slab because we have closely spaced joist. So the slab in between these joists will be considered as one-way slab because it will have longer length but shorter width.